Meanwhile, in the occupied West Bank, at least one Palestinian has been killed by Israeli forces during a raid on the village of Kafr Ein. There is also a raid underway at this moment in the city of Tubas, where Israeli soldiers have besieged a home. The military also stormed several other Palestinian towns overnight, including Dheisheh refugee camp in Bethlehem. And in a separate incident, Israeli forces killed a Palestinian in the occupied West Bank. This came after the army stormed the town of Beitunia ahead of the release of Palestinian prisoners on Monday. Confrontations broke out with the soldiers. They fired tear gas at the crowds, which included journalists. Zain Basravi is in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank, joining us for the latest. So, Zain, tell us first about this latest raid. It's ongoing, I understand.
That is correct. Once again, we wake up in the occupied West Bank to overnight raids that have extended into the morning, and they've already begun to take lives. 2 people killed overnight, both near Ramallah. One is a 17-year-old teenage boy, and the total death toll now is estimated to be around 241 people killed in the occupied West Bank since the events of October the 7th. The video that emerged from the incident of one of those deaths shows a man shot in the street, still alive, people trying to get to him, eventually taken by ambulance to a hospital, but the efforts of medics and doctors, as is so often the case in these incidents, proved unsuccessful. He did pass away. We've also heard this morning of another example of collective punishment playing out, again, in a place called Deir Mar, near Ramallah, northwest of the city, a home demolished belonging to a man named Dawood Daras, 41 years old. Now, his case is an important way to understand the Palestinian perspective on ongoing events. He was killed in August. He was accused of what the Israelis describe as a terror attack on a military checkpoint near an illegal settlement. That incident followed a raid on the refugee camp where he lived, and seemingly a form of retaliation. He was killed in the incident as well. Right. Israelis will describe it as an act of terrorism. Palestinians increasingly describe this as standing up to the occupation, resisting the occupation any way they can. His home demolished this morning, collective punishment on his family for an incident back in August. 932 structures have been destroyed over the course of the year so far, 180 of them at least, a form of punitive measure carried out against the families of Palestinians accused of criminal activity and these kinds of attacks. Right. And meanwhile, a home in Tubas, as you said, is surrounded near Nablus. 18 people detained so far in the last 24 hours.
So more raids, Zain, more demolitions as well, and also more arrests, even as some Palestinians are being released as part of the ceasefire deal.
That is correct. The metrics we've been looking at for the past several days, in the dozens, in the hundreds. What we know so far is in the 4 days, the Israelis have released 150 people as they'd agreed upon. But what they have done is detain over 200. Yesterday, the Palestinian Prisoner Society put out a number of 260 people in the first 3 days of the ceasefire and swap deal, detained in parallel to these releases that have been going on. They've detained another 18. Some have been let go, but that number still hovers between 200 and 300. Almost twice as many people have been detained in the last 4 days as have been released by the Israeli government. But everyone we speak to in the Palestinian territories, the families of those that have been freed, as well as the detainees themselves once they're out, they all say the same thing. As long as we're talking about these metrics, these numbers that are only in the dozens and the hundreds, we are missing the bigger picture. Everyone's hearts and minds, their thoughts, their attention is still focused on the staggering, unimaginable metrics coming out of Gaza. We've got 15,000 dead in less than 2 months of war, more than 7,000 people missing, presumed dead. So that death toll number going up, something that has been, that people in Gaza have been able to confirm since the ceasefire. They've been able to pull out more bodies. Tens of thousands of people injured, some of them life-changing injuries, the losing of limbs. Close to the entire population, 1.7 million or more, displaced. That's almost the entire population of the Gaza Strip. So what Palestinians we speak to keep saying is the most important thing now, while these releases are important, is to simply keep the negotiations going. Because as long as the two sides are talking, the bombardment of Gaza by Israeli forces is not happening.
Yeah, some staggering numbers there indeed. Thank you very much, Zain, for that. Zain Basravi live there in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank.